Tonight, more questions than answers as lawmakers quarrel over exactly what took place during a U.S. attack on a suspected drug boat.
I didn't see anything disturbing about it.
What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service.
The war crimes accusations and the push for answers as the Trump administration ramps up its mission across the Caribbean. Plus, redistricting showdown, a major win for the GOP in its efforts to reshape voting maps. A look at the potential impact on next year's midterms. And holiday splurge, enjoying the festivities with a healthy balance. How to conquer those Christmas cravings and avoid the junk. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The battle over who will control Congress next year heating up across the nation. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Texas will move ahead with a new congressional map that gives Republicans a big advantage in next year's midterm elections. It's thanks to a new decision by the Supreme Court. The justices ruling a lower court shouldn't have blocked Texas's new voting map and disagrees that race was a main factor. The map could give Republicans 5 more seats in the House, which could tip the balance in a tight Congress. Texas's move triggered a redistricting wave across the country. In California, voters just approved a new map that could help Democrats gain seats. For more on this and other top headlines from Washington, let's bring in our panel, Senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright and CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Great to have you both with us this Friday. So, David, let's start with you. This congressional map battle is really a tit for tat with both sides. Where does it go from here, David? And who has the upper hand here? Do Democrats or Republicans fare better in tipping the scales come the midterms?
Yeah, well, I guess we're going to find out next year. But the bottom line is I think Republicans still will have an advantage over Democrats, Jenna. When all is said and done, you've got states like North Carolina and Missouri that are redistricting, and of course, Texas now upheld by the Supreme Court. But let's remember, because Texas was upheld, by the Supreme Court, then you assume California is going to be upheld as well by the Supreme Court if and when it does go that far. So that's good news for Democrats. Bottom line, I think when you put it all together and it all comes out in the wash, I think Republicans will probably have a couple seat advantage in terms of at least going into the midterms to win those seats. Whether or not they win them is a whole different matter, but at least on paper, it looks a little bit better for Republicans nonetheless.
Yeah, and that's just, of course, one factor. Meanwhile, polling numbers are trending down for the president. Today's daily numbers from the conservative Rasmussen reports has the president's approval rating at a second-term low of 43%. Kelly, how much could this weigh in next year's election? And we know the administration is really trying to address the issue of affordability with President Trump traveling to Pennsylvania next week to talk about it. What can you tell us about that and any efforts they're making to try to turn things around?
So a couple of things, Jenna, on that point, getting to what David was talking about with the gerrymandering that's going on that's been approved by the Supreme Court in Texas. As long as Donald Trump is on the ballot, or at least people think that he's supporting those candidates during the midterms, regardless of where the approval ratings are for him right now, many of those Republicans, as we just recently witnessed in Tennessee, will likely have a chance of winning. Now, it might be a thin margin, but they will have a chance of winning because Democrats have got to get their act together. They realize they need a more moderate Democrat running against those Republicans in those battle areas. Now, here's what's going on. The Trump administration is very much aware of the affordability factor that Democrats have brought into the equation. Donald Trump has said all along that affordability is something that he has already promoted, is already doing something about it through his administration, and basically states that he inherited an administration that attacked affordability, referring to Biden administration. So the president is going on tour starting next week, beginning in Pennsylvania and traveling around the nation to start promoting prosperity and affordability that his administration, he believes, is providing.
Yeah.
Jenna, if I could just piggyback on that for a second on the affordability and the approval numbers. Look, ultimately with President Trump, right, it's all not just about the art of the deal, but he's a businessman at heart, and he, quote, knows the economy. You know, he's made a big deal about the fact that, you know, he does well when it comes to this issue. So if things are not going well from an affordability standpoint, that's going to be a direct hit on his approval numbers. And, one of the key parts to understand here is real wages. Under the Biden administration, real wages, and what that means is basically the purchasing power of your money was down about 4% under the Biden administration. Here with President Trump, it's down about 3%. So a little bit better than the Biden administration, up 1%. And that's the point that the White House is trying to make. That they're saying, look, we're making progress, but give us time. And I think the key will be Q1, Q2. So when is Q2 end? I believe June 30th. So let's talk about July of 2026 and see where the economic numbers are at that point. I think then we'll have a better sense of the midterms based on the fact that Scott Bessent and many other administration officials are saying, indeed, the economy will improve by then.
Yeah, that's also when kids are starting to go back to school. Parents are signing up for sports and all of the activities and the supplies, and that'll be telling to see how they're feeling at that point. All right, guys, let's shift gears and talk about a very high-profile arrest we saw here yesterday. FBI officials arrested a Northern Virginia man suspected of planting pipe bombs near the RNC and DNC headquarters ahead of the January 6 riots in 2021. This, of course, was launched 1,000 different conspiracy theories. Kelly, what more do we know about this case tonight?
So we know that Brian Cole Jr. is the man that they have arrested. The FBI did a thorough search, and we also know that he's already been in court where he's received a formal 2 charges. In addition to those charges related to using explosives, even though those pipe bombs did not go off, they were a threat to the RNC and DNC headquarters. Now, here's what's going on. People have been looking for motive. And so far from reporting of this appearance that he made in court and also speaking to members of the FBI, it does appear that Brian Cole has at least stated that he believed that the election was stolen. And so that could give an idea of what motivated him to actually allegedly plant these pipe bombs.
On the issue of the drug boat strikes, let's talk about that, that we're seeing down in the Caribbean. This week, lawmakers, they got to see a video of a controversial, what they're calling double tap on a suspected drug boat. Democrats say the video was disturbing, and they're accusing the military of killing 2 survivors in distress. Republicans say those survivors were trying to continue their drug operations. Kelly, what is the administration saying about that this evening?
So, look, this is going to be a hard-fought battle in terms of the public and how the public views this. Republicans and Democrats want this played out in the public before Congress. But from the administration standpoint, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, as well as the President of the United States, believe that they are acting within their legal parameters to stop any trafficking of drugs into this country. And so because of that, the president will likely double down on continuing these strikes on these boats, and we'll continue to see this play out. But in terms of this double tap strike that took place, it remains something that members of Congress will argue about and actually try to get it in front of the public so that they can see exactly what took place.
Yeah, one thing that has come out of the investigation is that Defense Secretary of War Pete Hegseth didn't actually order the so-called double tap on survivors. David, is that a win for the administration? And where does this go from here? Does it die down a little bit, or do we just see this continue?
Well, I think it'll continue for a while, but you raised the Washington Post story, which is interesting because this has the classic underpinnings, if you will, of a DC kind of deep state scandal. And what I mean by deep state is that you have a lot of folks that want to, let's be honest, they're not a big fan of Pete Hegseth. I'm talking about at the Pentagon, and we're not just talking Democrats here. And so I think you saw a story, in essence, leaked to the Washington Post. It was erroneous. And now, when you have the New York Times having to correct, in essence, the Washington Post, that's a good day for the Trump administration. And I think that's part of what we're seeing. I think for Pete Hegseth, he'll survive for now. I think it's a matter of how much water gets in the boat. We had the signal scandal a little bit. We have this. So far, this president seems to be very loyal to Pete Hegseth, and there seems to be a good relationship there. So I don't expect anything to happen to Hegseth. But then again, you never know. Washington's a bit crazy. Have you heard about that? Yeah, this Trump administration.
Yeah.
They go a mile a minute.
You know, I do think it was interesting. The media was very quick to call this a war crime. And it's looking, we'll see where this goes, but it was maybe a bit premature for them to do that. Senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great weekend. All right, coming up, President Trump pushes for the next phase of the Gaza ceasefire, and more than 1,000 Christian leaders visit the Holy Land when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Israel and Hamas are moving closer to phase 2 of the Gaza ceasefire. According to reporting from Axios, President Trump is expected to announce the next steps before Christmas, including a new governing plan for Gaza. Under phase 2, Israel would pull back from parts of the Strip and an international peacekeeping force would move in. A new Palestinian government made up of independent figures not connected to Hamas would begin to take over with oversight from a Trump-led board of peace. But a crucial step remains: the return of the final hostage's body. Gavali remains in Gaza today. His family held a demonstration calling for his return.
This is the first Shabbat that Ron is left there, alone, behind. Ron is still in the hands of the enemy. 254 hostages have been returned from Gaza, and our Ron is still there.
And that was Ron Gavali's family. Since the truce began in October, Hamas has returned 20 hostages alive, along with the bodies of 27 others. In response, Israel has returned hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, including those of convicted terror attacks. Meanwhile, in a show of solidarity, more than 1,000 pastors and Christian influencers are in Israel this week. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
And Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
A partnership between Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Friends of Zion Museum led to the unprecedented visit.
It's the first time in history the State of Israel has officially partnered with 1,000 strategic pastors to commission them as ambassadors to combat anti-Semitism and reach the youth of their generation.
Dr. Mike Evans says Israel's fight is not just on the battlefield.
Right now there's an ideological war that Israel's losing. So they need the evangelicals, they need the Zionists to fight an ideological war.
One of the goals of this gathering is to strengthen Christian support during a time of growing global anti-Semitism. They say the pulpit must speak louder than the propaganda.
So it's just, I think, an extraordinary time for pastors to go to their pulpits and to speak with clarity and with boldness and to push back on the anti-Semitism, the bigotry that is being pushed toward Jewish people and toward the people of Israel.
Unfortunately, the pulpit has become quiet about those things. We've allowed cultural voices to speak louder to the congregation than the pastors have on these topics. So it's been motivating to make sure that we go back and bring the message of who Israel is to the Lord, and our role as Christians to continue to support and pray for Israel.
There is a growing cancer within the evangelical movement in America where people are thinking Israel doesn't matter and there's nothing biblical about our relationship to Israel. This is very dangerous.
Ambassador Huckabee, a former pastor, sees a rising danger in the church.
Because this idea that God will break his covenant, or he has broken his covenant with the Jewish people, it borders on blasphemy. Because if God will break his covenant with the Jewish people, what on earth makes me think as a Christian that he will keep his covenant with me?
Wednesday, the pastors went to the Nova Music Festival site where Hamas terrorists slaughtered 378 and kidnapped 44.
That was emotional. That was devastating. I have 4 teenage children in Austin. We go to music festivals. That's what you do in Austin. And to think about the kind of terror that those young people experienced, it's just unfathomable.
Jiwa believes pastors need to see Israel for themselves.
The narrative that the mainstream media, especially in the U.S., has been fed, or the messages that are out there, I think that pastors and church leaders all need to come and understand and see the truth about the matter, the true story, and what actually happened here.
This gathering is a prelude to a massive campaign planned for next year.
We're launching in 2026 a global program to reach 1 million pastors and 1 million churches globally to teach them a biblical worldview so they realize God's not canceling any promises to the Jewish people, and he's not canceling to the Christians either.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, are your favorite holiday treats hurting your health? How to enjoy the season without overdoing the sugar or the guilt. Well, it's the season for sweets, but San Francisco is taking on some of the biggest food companies in the country. This week, city leaders filed a lawsuit against brands like Coca-Cola, Nestle, and Kraft, claiming ultra-processed foods are fueling a public health crisis. They say products like chips, soda, and candy are linked to serious health issues. The Consumer Brands Association, which represents these companies, is pushing back, saying there's no official definition of ultra-processed and that their products do meet FDA safety standards. San Francisco argues these foods are made to trigger cravings and that now is the time for accountability. CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now for more. Lori, always good to see you. So the Consumer Brands Association, they're saying there's no official definition for ultra-processed, but explain what they are, Lori, and why so many people, doctors, people in the health world, just civilians are very against them.
They're very, very bad. In fact, most health officials, most doctors and health experts will say that the ultra-processed foods, those are the main reason Americans are so sick with chronic diseases like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, even Alzheimer's, ADHD, the list goes on. And the way we can recognize them, a lot of us know what they are pretty much. They're the boxed, the packaged foods. You can always tell something's ultra processed if you flip it over and look at the list of ingredients, and there are about 1,000 ingredients, and you can't pronounce any of them, and you don't know what they are. But they have been shown to be highly addictive, so it's a huge problem. But yeah, there is really no official definition of ultra processed foods, so we do need to get that.
Yeah, I like to think of it as the interior of the store. That's the ultra-processed section. It's the exterior, the vegetables, the meat, all of that. That's the healthier food. Lori, how much ultra-processed food would you say the average American is taking in, and are there specific ingredients that you especially want to look out for?
Absolutely. So get ready, Jenna. This is going to shock you. The average American, 70% of the daily calories we consume on average come from ultra-processed foods. Partially because they're so convenient, they're everywhere, they're so easy, and also because they are so addictive. That is not a coincidence. They are engineered to be so addictive.
Yeah, that is so true. I think a lot of us can relate to that. So chips are, you're going to eat a lot more chips than you are maybe almonds or pistachios. Lori,
And,
with the holiday.
I was just going to say, to answer your question, what are the worst ingredients? Most of them, but we're talking about salt, sugar, fat, the big three: salt, sugar, fat. Processed foods, you can't really taste that they're super duper salty, but they are, because they put in the sugar and the fat to help balance out the salt. That's what makes them taste so great, but they're very high in salt. The sugar, obviously we know sugar is very bad for us, but there are also many different types of sugars. The ones that end in OSE, dextrose, maltose, glucose, and then also the fats. Those superheated fats, the oils, are extremely inflammatory. So those are the big three ingredients that make them so dangerous: salt, sugar, fat.
Yeah. Lori, this time of year is a tricky time of year. It's wonderful, but there are goodies everywhere, whether you're in the office, you're at a party, you're just out and about. What are some tips that you have for people to, enjoy the season, but not go overboard and feel absolutely awful?
Absolutely. So most people gain 2 pounds during the holidays, which doesn't sound like much, But the catch is most people do not lose that. So over time, that builds up. So we're talking after 10 years, you've gained 20 pounds. After 20 years, you've gained 40 pounds. So the best way to avoid that holiday weight gain is to just have a little bit of those wonderful foods. And the best way to do that is to fill up on fiber and protein starting first thing in the morning. Fiber is like chia seeds, oatmeal, fruits, and vegetables. These make us feel full.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Jenna, most Americans don't get enough fiber. But
Yeah.
when we have enough, we're less likely to overeat later.
Yeah, and protein too, so important, especially that first meal of the day. All right, CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, thank you. Have a great weekend. It's always good to see you. Okay, still ahead, holiday cheer at CBN's grand Christmas tree illumination. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, the Christmas season is in full swing, and families from all over CBN's Virginia Beach community came out to enjoy the season's cheer. Take a look.
Once again, the sounds of the season were a delight to all ears at the Founders Inn Grand Illumination event. The hundreds who came enjoyed local dance groups, community choirs, horse-drawn carriage rides, face painting, balloon art, Irish dancers, and a massive Christmas tree.
We enjoyed the dancing and the singing and hot chocolate and balloons, and we're looking forward to face painting and a carriage ride.
Oh no, we come every year. We've been here for, wow, 5-6 years already.
I'm looking forward to the people dancing and singing.
Carrying on the tradition of his father, Gordon Robertson read the Christmas story from the Bible.
Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is Christ, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloth and lying in a manger.
Then, the special moment arrived as the crowd filled the garden.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Amidst thousands of sparkling lights, he wished one and all a very Merry Christmas.
And Christmas is here. That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Have a great night.